The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is September 27, 2025, and once again we are going to look at the situation within Ukraine. So, let's start. First of all, we are going to talk about the Zaporozhye direction. The Russians are continuing their offensive in the direction of Stepnogorsk and also outside of these fields near Orikhiv. But that's about it for now. But in the Gulaipol direction, we got a lot of interesting things going on. The Russians are expanding their control outside of the village of Temirovka, and as a result of recent offensive operations by the group of forces Vostok, or East, the Russians have captured a shit ton of fields outside of the villages of Uspinivka, Novovasilivsky, Novomikhailivka, Okonichny, and Poltavka. They are now outside of these villages and are only awaiting orders from the Kremlin itself to get the go-ahead to try and take these places. Once they're able to, then the road to Gulaipol is wide open, and not much can really defend the town from any further Russian attacks. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Russians are continuing their push towards the town of Pokrovsk, not to be confused with the central Donetsk city of Pokrovsk, but the Russians have seized another settlement, and that is the small farming village of Stepove. The Russians now have control of over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, around 10 or so villages within the Dnipropetrovsk region. So the Russians now have this much control over Dnipropetrovsk, which is the most that they've held throughout the course of the 3-year war in Ukraine. And they're only continuing to advance as the days go by. So it is now very likely that the Russians are going to try to take Oleksivka alongside the villages of Verbove, Vishnivy, and Novolexandrivka. So yeah, the advances there continue. And in addition to that, the Russians are continuing to also take ground outside of the city of Pokrovsk. Just recently, it was discovered that the Russians are advancing outside of the village of Kotline and have taken over, I guess, this small area here. I guess it's industrial, I think, which is not too far from the mine in Pokrovsk, which is right here. And if the Russians are able to take this, then the E50 road is wide open. Like, they can cut it off with FPV drones or physically cut off the road outright, and the Ukrainians would be completely caught in cauldron. But I don't know if that's going to be necessary anymore, because the Russians have not only been able to solidify their control within the western and central parts of Pokrovsk, but they have now also been able to, I guess, put full FPV drone control over this industrial zone here in western Pokrovsk. So the Ukrainians have, for the most part, no way out of the city. And in addition, the Russians are continuing to advance in the direction of Myanograd, mainly through this gray zone here, which is outside of the villages of Mykolaiivka and Myro-Lyubivka. Now, in the last video I made, it appeared that the Ukrainians were about to put the Russians in a cauldron. But now it seems that the Russians are countering this attempt by the Ukrainians to do just that, and it appears that they are advancing in this area here to the village of Dorozhine and also Novi Shakove as well. In addition, they have re-entered the village of Nikonarivka and are also reportedly trying to take the village of Shakove too. And if these reports were to be confirmed, then the Ukrainian offensive in the Doropila direction, like to get the Russians to a draw or to defeat them completely, like eliminate all forces here, will have been defeated. Like the counteroffensive in this case would be repelled by the Russians. So yeah, the counter offensive by the Ukrainians is having some problems right now, and I'll keep you all updated in future videos on what will happen here next. Now, the Russians have also leveled the field here between Klibambok, Kadornivka, and also Yablonivka too. And they're continuing to clear out this pocket here, just outside of the city of Konstantinovka. The Russians are also continuing to advance in the direction of like the northern outskirts of Chasiv Yar, and then in the direction of Siversk. Apparently, the town is caught in a semi-cauldron. The areas east and north of Siversk are pretty much cut off, and God only knows just how much control over the village of Yampol do the Russians have. If they're able to take this village here, which is on the Servetsky Donets River, then there will be almost no way for the armed forces of Ukraine to supply the town of Siversk sufficiently. And also it would mean Liman would be caught in cauldron too. Most of Zarychine, as we pointed out in the last video, is under majority Russian control, and in addition, Darilove is under complete Russian control, along with partial control to like around 20% or so of Novoselivka. I think I pointed this out in the last video, but I want to keep you all in touch with what's going on the ground without causing much confusion. And in the city of Kupyansk, this is huge, by the way, the Russians have put basically 30% or so of the city under its control. They now control pretty much the entirety of the western part of like the far western outskirts and neighborhoods of Kupyansk. And also there are some conflicting reports that the Russians have also are putting these commie blocks here, this micro district here, in a cauldron, in addition to all these areas being pretty much surrounded by the Russians. We don't know where this is going to go, but all I can say is that the Ukrainians are running out of time to not only counterattack the Russians, but also to evacuate their forces from here as well. So, as far as I can see, if you want my personal opinion on where things are going within the city of Kupyansk, the Russians are likely going to retake complete control over this settlement within a matter of weeks, if not an entire month from now. Or two. The Russians are also trying to connect this bridgehead here within the Kharkiv region with the Kupyansk grouping, which I think is the Zapad group. And in the direction of Volchansk, the Russians are continuing to fight for the western neighborhoods within the town as well. And with that, that's going to be it for today's update. I hope all of you found that informative, interesting, and please tell me in the comment section below what you think of the recent updates, and I'll see you all in a few days' time. So I hope every single one of you has a great day, and I'll see you all next time. So take care and peace out. Bye-bye.